Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 5 of U03. And in this video, we are going to present to you guys the classifications of law that can be found in the movie of Dukun and Munafik 2. I am Nur Aina Bakisha binti Mazli and this is my team members.
I am Nia Arisa binti Yohanalis.
I am Lia Najihah binti Longcik.
I am Amania Nisofi binti Muhammad Gaddafi.
And I am Auni Najah binti Abdul Rashid. Issue here is what are the relevant classification of law applicable in the following situation for movie Dukun.
Assalamualaikum. Assalamualaikum. Waalaikumsalam.
The relevant law here is Section 302 of the Penal Code. Whoever commits murder shall be punished with death.
Next, do you know the first classification of law?
The first classifications of law is the criminal law. This is because it refers to the act of crime, which is murder, that the body of law will deal with, as well as the punishment. It punishes the wrongdoer to give her and others a lesson not to commit similar crime.
Next is the substantive law. It's a law that governs rights and liabilities among citizens and government. It also defines legal rules and principles which guide the courts in decision making.
Katil satu dah tidur, katil dua dah tidur, katil tiga tak tidur lagi. Next is the procedural law. It's a law that governs the procedures in the enforcement of rights and duties.
Next is the public law. Law that governs the relationship between the individual and states. Criminal law concerned with the criminal acts that are considered harmful to society and it is seen as an offense against the state.
Next classification is the national law. Law that is made and enforced within a country. Since the Penal Code Act 574 was enacted by the Malaysian Parliament and applies only within Malaysian territory.
The last classification of law is the written law. The law that has been enacted by the Parliament of Malaysia, formally enacted, codified and published as a part of Malaysian legal system. The application classifications of law in this scene, firstly, criminal law. In this scene, Diana Dahlan's act of killing the victim during a ritual involving black magic falls under the offence of murder, which is a serious crime under criminal law. The punishment, being the death penalty under Section 302 of the Penal Code, reflects the seriousness of the criminal act.
For public law, this case involves the application for public law because it is not just wrong against an individual, but an offence against the states of Malaysia. The case shows how the government through the criminal justice system enforces law to maintain peace and protect citizens.
Moreover, it's classified as written law since the Penal Code, which Act 574 is a written law enacted by the Malaysian Parliament. In this case, Section 302 of the Penal Code is applied directly as it prescribes the punishment for the murder.
Additionally, it is substantive law because in Section 302 of the Penal Code defines the crime of murder and prescribes its punishment, which is death. It determines court decision to Diana Dahlan for taking the victim's life and specifies the consequences she must face.
Besides that, it is classified as national law. This is because the offence took place within Malaysia,
Also, only Malaysian courts have the authority to try and punish her under the penal code.
Next, it is a procedural law because the accused, which is Diana Dahlia, is formally charged with murder under Section 302 of the Penal Code. After that, the court procedures follow Criminal Procedure Code, which is CPC, which are witness examined, evidence submitted, rights of accused protected.
But what is the conclusion? In conclusion, the classification of law in this scene is public law, written law, national law, criminal law, and substantive law.
Setiap yang zahir ada bangkitnya. Orang yang masih berpegang pada syariat tidak akan faham dengan matlamat sebenar ajaranku. Mereka tuduh kita rosakkan agama kerana menolak hukum Islam dan hukum syarak. Sesungguhnya mereka orang yang sesat, jauh dari petunjuk. Tidaklah golongan yang terpilih bakal mendapat kemenangan yang besar di akhirat.
The real issue here is what are the relevant classification of law applicable in the following situation for movie Munafik 2.
Setiap yang zahir pasti ada batinnya. Orang yang benar-benar memahami syariat Islam pasti akan memahami ajaranku. Hidup Abuja! Hidup Abuja! Hidup Abuja!
Based on this scene, the first classification of law is national law because it only applies in Malaysia and does not affect in other countries.
So, secondly, it is also written law since it was passed by the legislature and is recorded in the written form, which makes it official and enforceable.
Public law because it involves the state's role in protecting the Islamic faith and stopping individuals from committing actions that may harm the society's belief system. In addition, the Act also a form of substantive law as it defines clearly what the offences are, such as false doctrines and witchcraft, and also mentions the punishment for those offences.
Apart from that, the enforcement of this act is supported by the Sharia Criminal Procedure, Federal Territories Act 1997, Act 560. This act is an example of procedural law because it provides the steps and rules for handling offenders, including investigation, arrest, trial, and sentencing in Sharia court. Without this procedural law, the offences written in Act 559 cannot be properly enforced.
Lastly, this law is under Sharia law because it only applies to Muslim and deals with matters related to the religion of Islam.
What's wrong? Something must be playing. Let's take a look at the application of this scene. The first is the Sharia law. The Sharia courts established by state authorities have jurisdiction only over Muslim and deal with moral and family matters. The case revolves around Islamic teachings and Aqidah, which fall under the jurisdiction of Sharia law in Malaysia. The next one is public law, since it concerns offences against the state and individuals, not just private disputes. It is categorized as public law. This offence affects the whole community, not just private individuals. The state prosecutes to protect public interest and maintain harmony. The third one is written law. The offence is provided under written statutes such as the Sharia Criminal Offences Act enacted by the Parliament or state legislative assemblies. It is formally codified and enforceable in court.
The next one is substantive law. The law defines the rights and liabilities of Muslims in relation to their faith and what constitutes an offence under Sharia. It provides the rules for the court to decide punishment for those spreading false Islamic teachings. The sixth one, procedural law. It governs the process of handling offences in Sharia courts. It highlights the steps for investigation, arrest, prosecution, trial, and sentencing. For example, Sharia Criminal Procedure Federal Territories Act 1997, Act 560, which allows offences under Act 559 to be properly enforced. And lastly, the national law. It applies only within one country's legal system. In this case, Sharia Criminal Offences Federal Territories Act 1997 are part of the Malaysia's national law. They only operate in Malaysia and have no effect in other countries. So, now it's time to run. In conclusion, the classification of law in this scene is Sharia law, public law, written law, substantive law, procedural law, and national law. That is all from us. Thank you for watching.